It was nearly midnight when Evelyn sat by her window, her reflection a ghostly silhouette against the city lights. The clock on the wall ticked softly, each second, pressing into her chest like a reminder that time was slipping away. Her life, once filled with color and purpose, had dulled into shades of gray. Bills scattered across her coffee table like fallen leaves. Her half-written manuscript sat untouched for weeks, her dreams buried beneath the weight of overdue notices and unanswered job applications. She had been trying for so long, too long, to make something happen to turn her life around. But the harder she tried, the more it all seemed to fall apart. The room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint murmur of distant traffic. Evelyn rubbed her temples, exhaustion clouding her thoughts. She had spent hours scrolling through videos on manifestation, meditation, and success affirmations, desperate for something, anything, that could offer her hope. Every title promised miracles, say this and change your vibration, or the one secret the rich don't want you to know, but none of it ever worked. She was tired of fake promises and hollow hope. Still, that night felt different. Something in her heart whispered not to give up, not tonight. Her fingers moved across the keyboard almost unconsciously as she searched for something new, something real. That's when she saw it, a simple title glowing against the dark screen. Say this tonight and watch your life change by morning Florence Scovel Shinn affirmation. She hovered over it for a moment, her skepticism rising. Yeah, right, she muttered, but curiosity won. She clicked play. A calm, gentle voice filled the room. It wasn't like the others. There was no hype, no grand claims, just a serene tone that felt strangely familiar, like an echo from another lifetime. The narrator spoke words that pierced straight through Evelyn's weary heart. There is no lack in divine mind. What I desire is already mine. I now give thanks for the riches that are mine by divine right. Evelyn froze, her breath catching. The words seemed simple, but they vibrated with something she couldn't explain. Her chest tingled and she felt her pulse slow. She closed her eyes and repeated the words softly, her voice trembling. There is no lack in divine mind. What I desire is already mine. At first it felt awkward. Her voice cracked and she almost laughed at herself. What am I doing? She whispered, but the voice in the video urged her to say it with conviction, to feel it. So she tried again, louder this time, firmer. I now give thanks for the riches that are mine by divine right. Something shifted. The air in the room seemed to thicken, heavy with invisible energy. Evelyn could feel it, like a presence surrounding her, comforting her. She opened her eyes slowly. Nothing had changed, and yet everything felt different. Her heart, once tight with anxiety, loosened. A strange peace flowed through her veins, as if the words had rearranged something deep inside her. She turned off the video but kept whispering the words to herself. There is no lack in divine mind. She said it over and over until the meaning began to sink in. Maybe the problem wasn't the world. Maybe the problem had always been her belief in limitation. For years, she had been asking the universe for help while secretly expecting failure. She had begged for abundance while holding on to fear, but these words, Florence Scovel Shinn's words, spoke a different truth. They didn't ask, they declared. Evelyn stood and walked to her small bookshelf, where she kept a few spiritual books she'd collected over the years. There it was, her old, worn-out copy of The Game of Life and How to Play It. She hadn't touched it in ages. She ran her fingers over the faded cover, whispering to herself, maybe this is what I needed all along. She opened it randomly, and her eyes fell on a passage. Man's word is his wand filled with magic and power. Her heart thumped. A soft smile touched her lips for the first time in weeks. "My word is my wand," she murmured. "Then tonight I'll speak something new." Evelyn sat back by the window, her reflection merging with the moonlight. The city seemed quieter now, calmer, as if listening. She closed her eyes and began to speak slowly, each word deliberate, filled with faith she hadn't known she still possessed. "I am guided by divine intelligence. What I desire is already mine. Everything I need is being prepared for me now." As she spoke, she imagined light surrounding her, a golden glow that spread from her chest to the room, then out into the world. For the first time in months, she wasn't begging. She was claiming. She wasn't reaching out to the universe in fear. She was aligning with it in power. Minutes passed, her breathing slowed. The warmth in her body deepened until it felt like a soft current of electricity moving through her. The candles flickered slightly on her desk, though there was no breeze. It was as if the universe itself was responding, saying, "Finally." A tear rolled down her cheek, not from sadness, but release. She whispered one last time, "There is no lack in divine mind." Then she smiled, turning off the lights. The darkness no longer frightened her. She felt carried, held, watched over. When she crawled into bed, she placed her hand over her heart. Her last thought before drifting to sleep was not of fear or doubt, but gratitude. She didn't know what would happen tomorrow, but she felt something awakening within her, a spark of faith, quiet yet unshakable. And for the first time in a long time, Evelyn slept deeply. No racing thoughts, no anxious dreams. Just peace, the kind of peace that comes when the soul remembers that it was never alone. Outside, the moonlight fell gently across her window. The city continued to hum below, unaware that somewhere high above the streets, a woman's life had just begun to change. The words still lingered in the air, alive, humming softly. "There is no lack in divine mind. What I desire is already mine." And as she slept, the universe, silent, vast, listening, began to move things into place. The sunlight that morning came through Evelyn's curtains like liquid gold, soft and warm, spilling over her face until her eyelids fluttered open. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The quiet stillness of her apartment felt different, gentler, almost sacred. The usual heaviness that clung to her chest each morning wasn't there. It was as if the room had been washed clean of worry while she slept. She lay still, watching how the dust particles danced in the light. Something deep inside whispered that today was not going to be like the others. She couldn't explain it, but there was a presence in the air, a sense of expectancy, as though the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to rise. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, jolting her out of her daze. She reached for it lazily, expecting the usual: spam emails or a bank notification reminding her of what she didn't have. But this time her breath caught. The name in her inbox made her sit up straight. Lighthouse Publishing submission follow-up. Her heart began to race. She had sent them her manuscript 6 months ago, back when she still believed she could be a writer, before rejection letters and overdue rent crushed that dream. She clicked it open with trembling fingers. "Dear Evelyn, we came across your submission again while reviewing our archives and were struck by the quality of your writing. Could you please send us a few chapters for consideration?" Her hand flew to her mouth. For a long moment, she just stared at the words, unable to breathe. A laugh, half sob, half disbelief escaped her. "No way," she whispered. "No way this is real." But it was. The email was dated that morning, 7:14 a.m., just hours after she'd whispered her late-night affirmation. She stood there in her pajamas, blinking at the screen, her pulse pounding in her ears. "There is no lack in divine mind," she said aloud, testing the words again. The same warmth from last night returned, rippling through her chest like sunlight breaking through clouds. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her landlord. She winced, expecting bad news. Maybe another reminder about her rent. But when she opened the message, her jaw dropped. "Hi, Evelyn. We found an error in our accounting system. Looks like you've been overcharged for 3 months. We'll apply the balance toward your next payment." Evelyn laughed, this time freely, the sound echoing through her tiny kitchen. She could almost feel invisible hands rearranging her world. It wasn't just luck. It was as if everything was responding to her. She made herself a cup of tea, smiling at the soft hiss of the kettle. Even that felt different. Every sound, every scent, every small motion carried meaning. She whispered the affirmation again as the steam rose before her face. "There is no lack in divine mind. What I desire is already mine." All morning, strange coincidences continued to unfold. Her phone rang. It was her old college friend, Tessa, someone she hadn't spoken to in years. "Evelyn." Tessa's voice came bright and breathless. "I don't know why, but I just thought of you. I'm working on a content project and need someone to write for us. It's not huge, but it's paid. Are you available?" Evelyn nearly dropped her tea. "You're kidding." "Nope," Tessa laughed. "You were literally the first name that came to mind." By the time the call ended, Evelyn was shaking. She leaned against the counter, smiling through tears. Just last night she'd gone to sleep with nothing but faith, and now opportunity after opportunity was unfolding before her eyes. She decided to step outside for a walk. The air was crisp, and the city seemed alive in a way she hadn't noticed in years. The same streets she'd trudged through yesterday now shimmered with quiet promise. Even strangers seemed kinder. An old man nodded at her with a smile as she passed, and a young woman offered her a flyer for an art fair. She ducked into a small cafe on the corner. The place smelled of cinnamon and coffee beans. She ordered a latte and reached for her purse, but before she could pay, the barista smiled. "Don't worry about it," he said. "The guy ahead of you already covered your drink." She blinked. "What? Why?" He shrugged. Said he just felt like doing something nice. Evelyn accepted the cup, her fingers trembling. The lid was warm against her palms, but the warmth inside her chest was something else entirely. It was as though the universe was whispering, "See, you're supported, always were." She sat by the window, sipping her coffee and watching people pass by. For the first time in so long, she felt connected to everything. The woman walking her dog, the sunlight spilling across the street, the laughter from the next table, all of it seemed to hum with the same quiet energy that she had called upon the night before. When she returned home, she opened her laptop and began typing again. Words flowed easily this time, like water finding its course. She didn't second, guess herself, or overthink every sentence. The fear that used to choke her creativity was gone. By evening, she realized she had written over 5,000 words. She closed her laptop, smiling through tears of joy. Her manuscript, her dream, was alive again. As twilight crept through the window, painting her walls in shades of amber and violet, Evelyn felt that same energy from last night, the soft hum of something divine. She lit a candle on her windowsill and stood before it, whispering once more, "There is no lack in divine mind. What I desire is already mine." But this time she didn't say it as a plea. She said it as truth. The city lights began to flicker outside, mirroring the soft flame before her. She thought back to the person she had been just 24 hours ago, a woman lost in fear and doubt, begging the universe for scraps of hope. Now she felt like a completely different person. She understood that the shift had never been outside her. It had begun the moment she changed the words she spoke, and believed them. She sat by the window again, watching the night settle over the city. The world seemed to exhale with her. Every worry that had haunted her yesterday now felt like a shadow fading into the distance. When she crawled into bed, she didn't check her phone or overthink tomorrow. She closed her eyes, placed her hand over her heart, and whispered softly, "Thank you." As she drifted toward sleep, She felt it again, the invisible current moving through her life, rearranging everything for her good. She knew now that Florence Scovel Shinn hadn't been teaching magic spells, but truth, the kind that could only work when spoken with faith. Outside, the moon rose, glowing white against the Inkai sky, and somewhere beyond the stars something stirred. Plans already set in motion, miracles already unfolding. Evelyn smiled as she drifted off, her final words dissolving into the darkness. What I desire is already mine. And though she didn't know it yet, by morning, even greater changes were on their way. Weeks passed, and what began as small ripples in Evelyn's life grew into waves of transformation. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, no fireworks, no overnight fame, but a quiet unfolding, like dawn breaking gently over the horizon. The kind of change that seeps into your bones without you realizing it, until one day you wake up, and everything just feels right. The first proof of it came in the form of an email that started with the words, "We're thrilled to inform you Lighthouse Publishing wanted to publish her novel." They had not only accepted her manuscript, but offered her a modest advance and a marketing plan that made her dizzy with joy. She stared at the email for a full minute before the tears came, slow at first, then freely. It wasn't just relief, it was awe. This had once been a dream she'd buried under layers of disappointment, and now, without struggle, it had found her again. She sat in the same spot where she had once whispered Florence Scovel Shinn's words into the night. Only now she spoke them as gratitude, not hope. "There is no lack in divine mind," she said softly. "What I desire is already mine." Every part of her life began to reflect the same harmony. Money started showing up in unexpected ways, royalty prepayments, freelance clients who'd vanished suddenly reappearing to settle invoices, even small blessings like discounts, gifts, or refunded overcharges, but Evelyn didn't chase them. She simply received them with gratitude, as if she'd known they were on their way all along. Her days were filled with purpose again. She woke early, lit her candle, and began each morning by repeating her affirmations. Then she'd write sometimes for hours, losing herself in words that flowed effortlessly, like the universe itself was dictating through her. Yet the greatest miracle wasn't in the money or the career, or even the peace that had settled in her home. It was the way her heart had changed. The constant ache of worry was gone. She no longer felt like life was something to be conquered, but something to be trusted. Every obstacle now seemed less like a wall and more like a door. One evening she met Tessa for dinner, the friend who had reappeared weeks before with the writing job offer. The restaurant buzzed softly with conversation and the glow of warm lights. "You're glowing," Tessa said, smiling over her glass. "You look different." Evelyn laughed. "I feel different. I think something in me finally let go." Tessa raised an eyebrow. "Of what?" "Fear," Evelyn said simply. "I used to think life was this race I was losing. Now I see it's just a reflection. Whatever I think, whatever I speak, it shows up. I didn't believe that before, but now I do." Tessa smiled, intrigued. "You sound like one of those spiritual teachers." Evelyn grinned. "Maybe I'm just finally listening to them." That night, after dinner, Evelyn walked home through the cool night air. The city lights shimmered on the pavement like stars fallen to earth. Every sound, the hum of traffic, the distant laughter, the whisper of wind through the trees, seemed to harmonize with the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She realized she was no longer searching for signs or proofs. She was living them. When she reached her apartment, she paused by the door and looked up at the sky. The moon hung full and bright, casting silver light through the drifting clouds. She whispered, "Thank you," before stepping inside. The apartment, once cluttered and heavy, now felt like a sanctuary. The faint scent of lavender from her candle lingered in the air. She placed her bag down and walked to the window, where her old affirmation card sat propped against a vase. The paper was creased now, the ink slightly faded, but the words were alive as ever. There is no lack in divine mind. What I desire is already mine. She traced her fingers over the words, remembering that night. The loneliness, the doubt, the desperate whisper. It all seemed so far away now, like a dream she had outgrown. She lit the candle, the same one she had burned through every transformation. The flame flickered softly, reflecting in her eyes. She spoke again, not as someone hoping, but as someone certain. I am divinely guided. Everything I need comes to me in perfect timing. I am surrounded by infinite abundance. Her voice was steady, calm. The affirmation wasn't just words anymore. It was her truth. As the flame danced, she thought of all the times she'd nearly given up. The rejection letters, the sleepless nights, the fear of never being enough. Every single one of those moments had brought her here, to this peace, this power. Florence Scovel Shinn had once written, "Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly." Evelyn smiled. That was exactly it. She had stopped asking and started knowing. Hours passed, but she didn't notice. She sat by the candlelight, writing in her journal, filling the pages not with worries, but with gratitude. She wrote about every blessing, big and small, that had come her way. She wrote about how she'd learned that words could shape reality, that energy followed belief, and that miracles were simply natural laws obeying faith. When she finally set her pen down, she looked around her apartment one last time before bed. It felt like the same place, but it wasn't. The air felt lighter, the energy brighter, even the shadows seemed softer. She slipped into bed, the sheets cool against her skin, and whispered into the quiet, "Thank you for everything that has been. Thank you for everything that's coming." Outside, the city slept, unaware of the quiet miracle that had unfolded in one small apartment. The same woman who had once cried herself to sleep was now a woman who trusted life completely. Just before she drifted off, she saw something in her mind's eye, a vast golden light expanding endlessly, touching every corner of her world. It was the same light she had imagined that first night, the one that had surrounded her as she spoke the affirmation. But this time it wasn't imagination. She could feel it. The light whispered back to her, silent yet clear, "You believed. Now it is done." Evelyn smiled in her sleep, her heart still whispering the words that had changed everything. "There is no lack in divine mind. What I desire is already mine." And as the candle flame flickered out, somewhere beyond the veil of dreams, the universe moved again, aligning people, timing, and opportunities, all orchestrated by one woman's faith, spoken in existence on an ordinary night that became extraordinary.